Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we're in Forward Secondary Battery Plot on USS New Jersey, where they would have aimed and fired the 5-inch guns for fire missions. And we've got a very cool document that we just recently found in the museum's collection. It is labeled as the NGFS, Naval Gun Fire Support, Firing Report for 15 December 1984, 5-inch mission fired in Lebanon. That's a typo. It would be December of 83, not 84. Typos, of course, much harder to do. This looks like it was done on a typewriter. It actually looks like it's been copied on a ditto machine, and it's kind of faded. But we're gonna read through and we're gonna look at it. It's the first one of these I've seen for Battleship New Jersey, but it's a pretty standard document. So I thought it would be cool to go through it and look at what was happening for this particular fire mission. So, point 1. While on patrol in FSA 3, south of BIA, B-I-A, New Jersey was requested to report, it's got to report written twice. Again, hard to correct something they've typed up on a typewriter. New Jersey was requested to report on station for a 5-inch NGFS mission. The Marines at BIA were receiving incoming mortar fire from a site approximately 3,000 yards south of the airport. Point 2, New Jersey was steaming at NGFS Condition 2, which means that aft main and secondary plots were manned, and the ready mounts were Mount 55 and 56. So the aft mount on each the port and the starboard side. The ship's head, the heading, during the mission varied from 150 T, 150 degrees true, to 170 true. Speed was only 5 knots. So she's doing like relatively slow donuts off the coast of Lebanon during this. The following events comprise the mission. At 17:55 or 5:55 p.m. local time, BLT spot team goes to CTF 61, indicating that BIA is at Condition 1 and is receiving incoming rounds. 5 minutes later, at 1800 hours, CTF 61 directs New Jersey to report on station with BLT NGFS spotter, call sign GYZ, because we haven't had enough acronyms yet. 5 minutes after that, so we're now 10 minutes from the initial call at 1805, on station, ready for call. And it's got a bunch of grid coordinates and stuff for the fire mission. Specifically, it says, prepare to fire 4 guns, 3 salvos, do not load. At 1807, so we're now 13 minutes from the initial call. They are ready, GTL 090, top 18, firing Mount 56. At 1810, so now 15 minutes after the initial call, permission granted by CTF 61, so that's probably Commander Task Force 61, to fire. 1812, shot, GTL 090. 1814, repeat. 1816, L400, so that's probably left 400 yards. GTL 091, shot. So this says next, at this point, New Jersey was actively tracking with Sky 1, a gunboat which was nearing our stern. Gun control directed, that's pretty faded here. Gun control directed shifting to Sky 4, so they've gone from the forward 5-inch director to the aftermost 5-inch director, which required plot to switch directors on the switchboard to computer NR3, as computer NR4 was in use for the Naval Gunfire Support mission. So remember, only aft plot is manned, so I'm assuming here in forward plot we've got NR1 and NR2, and then back aft we've got NR3 and NR4. So here in plot is where the wall of switches is, where you would switch which computer is going to which directors. Those are the switches that you can see that I am facing towards right now. We are now 27 minutes from the initial call for support, and 12 minutes from when permission to fire was given. Plotting room officer stops mission, passes delay 5 to spotter while checking solution. CIC had a GTL of 088, which concurred with the Mark 48 shore bombardment computer. Secondary had a GTL of 098 instead of 088. So the gunnery officer says, wait 5 minutes, we're going to rectify this and figure out why we've got an issue here. They have a few more problems. Remember, the ship has just been reactivated. This is one of her first time firing her guns, and certainly one of the first times live firing the guns for this crew, or certainly one of the first times firing their guns in combat for this crew. At 1827, the computer bearing power reference was missing. Later found to be a switching problem, the result of switching the directors. So apparently when they threw the switches to change directors, they were missing the bearing from the new director. So, normal thing, multiple switches had to be thrown, and they didn't all get thrown, and they found it later. But in the short term, they chose to switch computers. That solved the problem, and then it meant that the GTL was matched on all the systems. That issue between 088 and 098 is rectified. At 1829, they're ready again. They fire 4 guns, 3 salvos, fire for effect. Since there was only 1 mount crew available, and therefore only 2 guns, they were firing half of the guns at twice the number of times as requested. So that's interesting. The spotter ashore who's calling for support, asking for this many shots, isn't aware of what guns are manned on the ship, obviously. It's interesting that they're not bothering to go to general quarters for this. They've got these guns readily manned in case that they get a fire mission called in, and they get the mission called in. And even though it's been 20 or so minutes since that was called in, almost 30 minutes at this point, they're still saying, nah, we don't need to man extra guns. We'll do the mission with the 1 mount that is manned. Remember, it's 1 mount on each side, so only one of those mounts is broadside to the target. The other one's pointing the wrong direction. 3 minutes after that, so at 1832, they're given the instructions D200, or down 200 yards. 4 guns, 3 salvos, fire for effect. The spotter is now walking the target. So essentially walking the target, it's like going down a stepladder. You fire over, and then you just keep coming back, and you'll destroy everything in each of these grid squares as you go. So for the next one, 2 minutes later, at 1834, you got right 100, down 200, 4 guns, 3 salvos, fire for effect. At this point, Mount 56 reports only 7 rounds left. So they shoot what they have, and then at 2 minutes later, at 6:36, they delay 10 while repositioning. Rather than bringing more ammo up to the handling room where the ready service ammunition is stored and manning the magazines, they're going to turn the whole ship around at 5 knots, so it takes about 10 minutes, and then they're going to use Mount 55 to complete the mission, which still has ammunition in its handling room. So that's really interesting to me that they are firing the guns without going to general quarters, without bringing extra people in. They're just firing what ready service ammo they have. The handling rooms do have racks for ready service ammunition. Typically in peacetime, there would not be ammo in those racks, and clearly they position some ammo in there, knowing that they were going to be called for gunfire missions, knowing that they're in a hostile area. At 1839, you've got end of mission, target destroyed, passed by spotter, all mortar firing has stopped. 1840, Bull report sent 40 rounds, HEPD expended. So that's high explosive point detonating, which means rather than using like a VT fuse, which would explode in the air above the target, they wanted this to hit the ground and then explode there. So all told, this fire mission lasts 45 minutes between when the Marines call and say that they're receiving mortar fire to when the task force commander assigns the mission to New Jersey. New Jersey hooks up with the forward spotter, and when they're able to dial in shots on the target and then do a rolling barrage essentially to wipe out the target. And then finally, battle damage assessment passed from CTF 63. I suspect that's supposed to be 61. Previously was 61 on here. That's probably another typo. Mortar fire suppressed. 12 believed killed, 20 injured. Several calls made to embassy during fire said they would stop firing if we would. No photo coverage of damage provided. Don't you love that? The bad guys start shooting at you, and if you shoot back, they call and say that they'll stop. Well, what's funniest about this is those are the 5-inch guns. They haven't even decided to use the 16-inch guns on a target like this. The 1980s, they didn't take out their smartphone and Google, hey, what's the American Embassy phone number so we can call them and tell them to stop. I guess they showed up with the phone number written on a piece of paper or something, knowing what it was so that if they received retaliatory fire that they could call a timeout. Yeah, no, guys, if you start a war with somebody and they park a battleship off your coast, they're clearly committed to blow something up. I don't think calling and asking them to stop is going to do anything. It's the bomb damage assessment at the end is interesting. It's indicating that there are at least 32 persons present at this mortar site, which seems like an exaggerated number of people. It says that there's no photo provided. We've got no further documentation here that how they arrived at that number. But it seems to indicate that it was a quite effective mission that ended the mortar fire. Interestingly, it does not mention secondary explosions, which you would often see during counter-battery fire, and that's usually mentioned in other reports like this that I've read in the past. So again, who knows how the BDA was attained and how effective it was, but there was no further mortar fire from this position. The support you guys have been giving the museum has allowed us to dive more into our collections, which means that we're finding more documents like this that we previously haven't seen. I think it's awesome that we're able to produce all this new research, that we're able to put it out there to the public so you guys can see it and have access to it as well. Is there a time period that you would like to see more information about? This one obviously is from the 1980s, 1983 to be specific. Is there time periods that you would rather see over this? I find this interesting because so little stuff from this time period so recent that there's very little of it out there. But hey, maybe you're more interested in another period. Let us know, and in future videos we'll cover some of those other documents we find. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and the channel. Thanks for watching.